Our ability to perceive quality in nature begins, as in art, with the pretty. It expands through successive stages of the beautiful to values as yet uncaptured by language. Aldo Leopold.
Welcome to The Wandering Naturalist, a Three Rivers Park District podcast. I'm Angela, she, her, a wildlife biologist with Three Rivers Park District.
And I'm Brandon, he, him, an interpretive naturalist with Three Rivers Park District. Three Rivers Park District manages over 27,000 acres of parks on lands that are the ancestral and contemporary homeland of the Dakota people in suburban Hennepin County and surrounding areas.
So join us as we wander from park to park and discuss your stories of the past, the nature in our present, and how they have shaped our parks.
Come wander with us,
The Wandering Naturalist.
I wanted to start with that quote because I think it really sums up what we're going to be talking about. I love finding animal tracks, and I think when I first saw animal tracks, it was very much like oh, cool, an animal left that. And I'd be like, oh, is it a dog? Is it a cat? Is it a coyote? It was very basic level. And the more that I've studied animal tracks and the more I've seen it, the more I've realized what they really are is they're a story. They're a story that's been left behind about the animals that gives us a glimpse into their life. We're shifting from that pretty to understanding things that maybe we didn't before. We're going deeper. And I just love it when we have a fresh snowfall and you do that first walk through the snow and you see the tracks everywhere, because we rarely get to see or know what is an animal really doing.
When we're not there.
Even when we are there.
True.
Because the animals, usually they run from us, they hide, or if they're used to us for using our bird feeders, the behavior is still different than what it would normally be in their normal lives because they're being impacted by us. They're acting differently because we're nearby. And let's face it, we're kind of big and scary. And so I feel like when I get to see a story written in the snow or a story written in the mud, I'm seeing a glimpse into the life of an animal that I wouldn't normally get that part of their story.
Well, and you might be the only one seeing it. So it's kind of like this exclusive.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Like no one else, you get to be the first. You get to kind of have it just for yourself, for your imagination and logic to work through trying to, be the detective on what it is telling.
It's like having, that early access with Patreon, but I don't have to pay for it.
Yes, it's amazing. You can do it anywhere.
Exactly. And I know I've seen some really cool stories around Creek Park Reserve, other places too, but Elm Creek Park Reserve is what stands out to me because for a long time I used to snowshoe into work in the winter, which was incredible. I saw so many things.
What, you're not doing that anymore?
Something about having a kid that I have to drop off at school.
Yeah,
that interferes a little bit, but one of these days I'll get back to it.
And lack of snow.
There is that too, yeah. Yep. But when I would do that, or even when I take groups out and I go and show them these stories, there's some things that are really cool. And some stories are really obvious and they have a really quick tragic ending. Like when I saw mouse tracks hopping on top of the snow, and then all of a sudden there was this huge crater in the snow, little drops of blood, some wing imprints. I'm like, oh, yep, an owl got that. It ate pretty good last night. Short story. Yes, exactly. Others, I can only tell part of the story. Some of it's still a mystery. I remember one time seeing weasel tracks cutting across the trail and had a drag mark beside it. It had caught something and it was dragging it back maybe to a safe place to eat it or to cache it. I don't really know, but what did they catch? I couldn't tell, but it was just really neat seeing that. And then there's been others that I can't stop thinking about. It's been years and it's still
and you'll never
in the back
know
of my head because I won't. Exactly. I was snowshoeing into work one day. I was the first person to walk in the snow. It had been a fresh snowfall the night before, and right on top of the snow, no snow on it at all. So what had just happened after the snow finished falling was an inside-out squirrel skin.
Ew.
It was so cool. There were no tracks
but really
around it.
Cool. Like, what would do that?
Right? And that's what I'm like, what is happening?
And no tracks
No tracks around it at all.
Wow.
But there were trees overhanging the trail. And from some research I did, it sounds like bobcats, when they eat animals, will peel the skin off sometimes, and almost like you're taking your sock inside out.
Yeah, I feel like I have heard this somewhere.
I think I've talked about this a little
maybe
bit before.
Maybe it's from you, but...
And so, did a bobcat do it? But I know you all...
We've never seen
bobcats
in the parks.
Exactly. You've been doing your camera traps. You've never seen a bobcat.
Anything is possible.
I don't know. It's
I'm
something
not
that's
willing
always
to
with
rule
me.
it out. Anything's possible.
So what about you, Angel? Do you have any stories you've come across?
Yeah, lots of similar stuff. I feel like otters come to mind when I'm out doing the turtles in the winter. We get their winter locations out on the ice, and so I'm around a lot of the water bodies. And so the first time finding like a really good otter slide is just so cool and so fun. It's so unique, and you know exactly what, and it just has like this playful feel to it, right? Like to picture that image of an otter running and sliding and making that different method of transportation in the snow is so cool.
Absolutely. I love seeing otter slides.
Yeah, you probably see them around that creek too.
Other people have actually seen the otters. I see the otter slides once or twice a year. I'm like, oh, I want to see an otter.
But I do have another really favorite one that was like a bucket list thing, and maybe other fellow nature nerds will be like, yeah, that's really cool. I found a shrike cache in a buckthorn.
I saw it in the prickly ash.
It was in a buckthorn at Lowry Nature Center, and I was working on invasives at that time and walking through, and all of a sudden, like right at eye level, is this skewered mouse on the buckthorn, and it was just like, I just was so excited, and everyone else around me was like, weirdo, like why? It's just a mouse stuck in a tree, and I'm like, no, a certain bird put it there, and it's just, I thought it was really cool.
Shrikes are one of my favorite birds. I love them. And I think it was in Crowhassan, I saw a headless mouse skewered to a prickly ash.
That's so pretty cool on the prickly ash, too. Yeah. So I think, just showing that signs can look so different. It's not just about prints in the snow or prints in the ground. There's other signs of nature and animals and insects. You and I was like, can we have insect signs? Because we could do a whole one on just insect tracking, because that can be done too, people.
Yeah, I think we definitely are going to have that as a topic.
We'll come back to come in another season.
But you are absolutely correct. Fur, browse, scat, smells. There's countless signs that all come together. And if you can learn how to read them, you can read a story about what was happening. And today, one of the best at reading these stories I know is going to join us, Adrian Iacovino, Education Program Coordinator at Mississippi Gateway Regional Park. He is going to discuss with us why he started reading these stories, the community around it, and how he does it. In our second episode, Michael Kurtz, enrolled member from the Lower Brule Sioux Tribe in South Dakota, and local naturalist, talks with us about reading animal tracks and capturing them in photos. And finally, in episode 3, Grace Milanowski, coordinator of the Offal Wildlife Watching Project with the University of Minnesota Extension, and Dr. Ellen Candler from the University of Alaska Fairbanks will talk to us about the special project they are doing in partnership with Minnesota hunters to see what visits gut piles from deer. It's time to follow the deer trail and read the clues as we jump into our first interview. Joining us is Adrian Iacovino, Education Program Coordinator at Mississippi Gateway Regional Park. And I remember one of the very first times I met him. It may have even been the first time I met Adrian. He was leading myself and other naturalists on a hike in Mississippi Gateway Regional Park. He was teaching us animal tracks, and he saw some yellow snow. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, there was like a dog there or something like that. But he immediately jumped down in his belly, and he had his nose in there, and he was smelling it. And I'm like, what is he doing? And then he's like, oh, wait, that's a female red fox. And I was amazed. I'm like, we need to have Adrian on the podcast. Because if he is that passionate about animal tracks, this is the perfect guy to have. So welcome, Adrian. I'm so excited to have you. Can you introduce yourself?
And thanks for bringing that smell back to me.
Anytime. Yeah, I know it's a great smell.
For me, it wasn't a smell. It was an image of Adrian just almost like an inch away from yellow snow.
Yeah, and that yellow snow had that bit of red, which is the fox's estrus. And so it was fox mating season. It was right around Valentine's Day that we were doing that program. And it's definitely a track that I look for every February 14th or in and around that day.
I had no idea. And so I learned a lot that day.
You can sniff other yellow snow, or is it just
you
for
can.
fox? Okay.
Oh, no, you can sniff all the snow you want.
I don't know how we should be promoting this to our listeners.
So just remember the rule. You can smell yellow snow. You can't eat yellow snow.
This is true.
Yes.
This is very important. True. I feel like I was just talking to someone else, and I don't know how we got on the subject of pee. This is off topic. But this was with tiger. Like certain tiger pee smells like popcorn. So, I was like, what? This is all new to me that different, wildlife urine smells different. Like, it's a whole new thing unlocked in my brain.
And sometimes it can smell like what they're eating.
It can change and be variable.
Yeah, depending on the season. Exactly. So my name's Adrian Iacovino. I use he and they pronouns. I'm a parent. I am a partner. I'm a storyteller, and I'm a wildlife tracker. I grew up in the city of Ravines, Takaranto, Scarborough, or Toronto. It's a dish with one spoon wampum, which is the agreement between the indigenous people in that area, the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, about sharing the land and the resources. And in Toronto, I grew up biking around the Highland Creek, and I'd bike to my friend's house, to the school, go play video games in the basement. I didn't grow up wildlife tracking. My family are a family of gardeners and writers. And so, yeah, I didn't know anything about wildlife tracking until my early 20s. And one thing that I did do growing up was mushroom hunting. And it's kind of similar to wildlife tracking because you're out in the forest. I was with my grandparents. They're from the Czech Republic. That was something they did, something they brought with them to Canada. And so we would go out and look for mushrooms. And just like with tracking, when you start to look for something, you see one mushroom and then suddenly you see another one and another one and another one. And your brain just starts to pattern on what's in front of you. And so this is what I love about wildlife tracking. And it has to do with what I grew up doing.
I love the mushroom hunting things. I feel like, yeah, it's something when you see one and then another one in your brain, kind of like it has to be sending endorphins because that was such a childhood memory for me. But I think also too, I would argue like when you're looking for mushrooms, you're looking for other correlations, right? Like you're not just looking for the mushrooms, you're looking for maybe the sunlight or other plant communities or a certain dead tree. And,
right.
How far dead is that tree? So, a different way of tracking that you didn't even maybe know at the time.
Exactly. And I would even expand my definition of what tracking is to be about the plant communities and to be about the rocks and the soil and, where the closest body of water is or which direction the wind is coming from, the humidity, right? All of this is the immediate interplay between wildlife touching the ground and really the way that they inhabit their space.
I'm curious, you said you didn't get into tracking until your early 20s. At this point, you seem like you really know a lot about it. What inspired this passion that obviously made you just do this like huge deep dive into it?
Yeah, I got a summer job working at a summer camp in Toronto, and we were working out of public parks. We were by the Humber River, and the director of the organization, Andrew McMartin, who ended up becoming a mentor of mine and a good friend to this day, we were doing staff training and he brought us over to the Humber River and he was like, "What's this on the ground?" And it was a canine track and it had like this X mark in it. And he started asking me these questions like, how many toes do you see there? Are there claws? How, compare it to something. Is this one bigger or smaller? Is this a left foot or the left or right foot? Is this front or hind? And suddenly I started, as he was asking me these questions, my brain was reorganizing what I was seeing. And I just started to look at things in a different way. This same person had like a handmade basket out of split ash bark, and he had a crooked knife that he had made. And he just had all of these skills and this inspiration and was full of integrity. And I think that day I was like, I got to learn how to do this.
I want to be like him.
I want to be like him. Mm-hmm. Oh, the other question he asked me was, which way is this coyote looking? And I was like, what?
You can tell that?
You can't. I mean, in that track you could because of I won't get into it, but you could.
You can go
and
deeper.
He could, and you can go deeper. And so it's not just like who is there, but what are they doing? And again, what is their relationship to the land? And I think that's what I'm really interested in. What are the animals' relationship to the land? What's my relationship to the land? And how am I being a good neighbor to the animals in the area that I inhabit?
I love that. And I love that example, how you say you can keep going deeper, because I often relate reading animal tracks to reading stories. And I think just like reading a book, it's a skill that you develop and learn more and more about. And I often think about the fact that I'm kind of in the transition from picture book to graphic novel stage. I can read some tracks. I can generally identify the animal. There's a few things I can pick out. And I feel like you're like on the William Shakespeare stage end of it. Like you can take something that I wouldn't even recognize as a track or a sign, and you're like, oh yeah, this is what this means. And I love how there's just a whole spectrum. And I think that that's what I would encourage our listeners. You can start this journey, and maybe you're still at is that the letter A or the letter B stage, and that's okay. Just like reading, it takes time to develop.
You have to start somewhere.
And it sounds like if you want to develop that skill, there's an amazing community of trackers that really support people and help people. You said it was this tracking world was a big part of your interest. Can you explain, maybe tell us a little bit, what is the tracking community like?
Yeah. So when I first started doing wildlife tracking, I was mostly doing it with young people. So I was leading nature connection programs in Toronto, in the ravines, and in Guelph, Ontario. And so that meant that I was taking kids out on a snowy day, and we were, we were finding a track and trying to follow the trail until we could get to the animal. That was always the idea, right? At the end of the trail, the animal's there. And we would do that with like porcupine trails, and we'd follow this like meandering trail through the cedar forest, and then we'd get to a tree where the porcupine went up the tree. There's like there's like Gatorade orange pea at the base of the tree and a whole bunch of scat, and we look up and the porcupine's just feeding there, and we're like, wow, here's a porcupine, and the kids would remember that, and they'd bring that story home. And we'd always encourage, at the dinner table or on your way home from outdoor school, you got to tell this story to someone. Find your neighbor, find your cousin, call your grandma, tell her this story, right? Because it's the kind of story that is so inspiring. I think that everyone loves animals, and we don't get enough interactions with wildlife these days. And so just these stories are so special, and they're meant to be shared around the dinner table.
Well, and that seems like something that is almost instinctual. Every time I show a kid a deer trail, they're like, let's go find the deer.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you could end up at the trail and see this porcupine, that's just incredible.
And so, Brandon, to answer your question about the tracking community, though, I'm glad you brought up deer trails. This past weekend, I was with the Wildlife Tracking Project, the Minnesota Wildlife Tracking Project, which is a group of passionate individuals, and we get together once a month and we facilitate tracking club. So it's all free. We invite people to come out. Last month, we had about 20 people. We were out at Mississippi Gateway Regional Park where I work, and we were following deer trail, and we were trying to catalog what are the deer eating at this time of year. The snow is gone. The green hasn't come up yet. And so how are they staying alive? And so we went and looked at all sorts of plants. We saw them eating on catalpa tree, ash tree, sugar maple, basswood, poison ivy stalks, raspberry, goldenrod, dogwood. I think we were trying to get to 10. What else did we see? Smilex.
They eat Smilex?
Yeah.
That's so thorny.
Yeah, thorny.
Not all Smilex is thorny.
Okay. And I think Smilex, at least I refer to the common name greenbrier.
Correct. Yeah, but there's different species.
Okay, I think I only noticed the thorny one because I'm like, that is a nasty looking plant.
There's like a really viney one that grows pretty commonly in the woods that doesn't have thorns.
Okay.
This one had thorns.
Did it?
That's
really?
all
This one had thorns, and they were eating thorns.
But it's got thorns and bristles and
I know.
spines.
Yeah.
And like, how? It's poor tongue.
They were also like hitting the euonymus so hard. The euonymus right now, or is it firebush that people call that?
Winged. There's like, burning bush.
Burning bush. And so that stays green all year round. And so I think it's photosynthesizing. It's got a lot of nutrients, I'm assuming. And so they were eating that. And so that was really cool. We had people who had never been out tracking in their life, they had never been out before. And so what we were looking for was the browse marks. And so it looks like a stick has been broken off. And then there's a little kind of stringy frayed bit that stays on because deer don't have top teeth. And so when they bite things, they leave this like stringy bit. And so this person who had never been out before, by the end of it, we were out for 3 hours. He's picking out deer browse from far away. He's like, oh, is that one? Oh, that's one over there, and that's one over there, right? It's that mushroom hunting mentality that comes back.
Once you know it, then you see it everywhere, and you just can't really turn it off.
Exactly. And so I think that's what our project is to get people tuned into that.
But they're learning plant identification. They're learning so much more about nature along the way, and essentially being scientists, because that's how a lot of research is done. If we wanted to like investigate deer browse and diet, that's probably the best way to do it.
And we're just doing this for fun on a Sunday morning, you know?
It's a great way to start a Sunday morning. Out in the woods.
And how do you feel after that? And how do you notice the folks after they leave? It's a kind of like this purposeful forest bathing, which is...
Right. I mean, people go home inspired. People go home thinking like, wow, I had no idea that this was out there. Or I could even discern that this is a rabbit browse versus a deer browse. Or like we were up north with the tracking club recently at Saxon Bog, and we were finding moose browse and deer browse, but the moose browse was like higher. 8 feet up. Exactly. And so the community is really cool. We also do study buddy sessions, which is like a monthly potluck at someone's house. And we just
I had no idea a group like this even existed.
I know. Angela, it's like the nerdiest group ever.
I love it.
Those are the best groups.
And, you know, people have like Canva presentations that they'll do, or like I've got my tracking journal in my backpack, just drawings. And I'll just show people like, hey, this was a coyote trail that I saw. It was doing something weird. It did a straddle trot and then
you'll
a side
share
trot.
that at the club with the group.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
And if anybody is like, oh, I want this to be my passion, I'm interested in this, can people sign up for this tracking club? Like, how do they get more information about that?
Yeah, they can sign up for it. You can look up Minnesota Wildlife Tracking Project. On Google, you'll find us, and then they host monthly meetups. It's all by donation, and the donations go to the facilitators. I'm a facilitator, and it goes to our ongoing training.
Awesome. That's cool. Do you have any favorite stories of reading animal stories you'd like to share?
Yes. Can I answer one more thing from the last question?
Please do, yeah.
Okay. One quick story about the tracking community. So I'm from Toronto, and one of my colleagues and friend out there, Lee Earle, was with someone from the Minnesota Wildlife Tracking Project. In Poland, they were doing a bison tracking expedition, and they realized that they both knew me while they're on a trail in Poland. And I'm like, what? My name was whispered in a Polish forest somewhere?
Oh, looking for bison. I didn't even know there were bison in Poland.
And, you know, the tracking community is just so small that there's all of these interconnections. And so whether you're on iNaturalist or maybe on a Facebook group or something, like you get to know the names of people who are posting or some of the authors. And like I've met some authors that I look up to, and like I have their books by my bedside table and I flip through them all the time. And it's just so cool to get to be in the same room as some of the leading practitioners, scientists, authors, enthusiasts.
That sounds
so. That's
amazing.
Not your favorite story. I feel like every story you tell him, like this has got to be it. But
Angela,
there's better.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
I hope so.
Okay, I couldn't narrow it down to one, but you're going to think I'm a weirdo. But I used to, back in Guelph, where I was living, there was a fox that lived nearby. The fox was like 2 blocks away from me in this abandoned little lot. And I found out about this fox in the wintertime because I was following their trail, and I followed it to a spot where there was a hole in a fence and there was a hole in the ground and there was a den that it was going in and out of. And I could tell that that's where it was going to. So I decided that I was going to start feeding this fox, and I was going to start feeding this fox roadkill rabbits that I was finding on my way to work. So I'd stop and pick them up, and then at the end of the day, go and put these out for the fox. And the fox would eat them. The fox would, like the next morning, it would be gone. And there would be like a fox pee there. And
it was its little gift to you.
Yeah.
That's how he first started sniffing yellow snow.
For our listeners who can't see right now, he was doing like the wine smelling. Yeah.
So one morning I'm going out trying to check on the fox. I didn't put any rabbits out for it, but you know, foxes like to hunt voles, and there was this trail that looked like a cat creeping, and then this big space, and then a face print of a fox, and I could see the nose and I could see the eyes and the
The
ears.
yeah.
Really?
And it was just like a mask of a fox. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I took a photo of it. It doesn't look like anything really, but I saw it and it was amazing. And probably my favorite story is a few years back, I was on a wildlife expedition in Algonquin Provincial Park. I was with an organization called Earth Tracks and Alexis Burnett, who has been running this weekly tracking expedition for the past 25 years. We go out to the research station and we spend 5 days out on the land following moose, marten, fisher, deer, coyotes, wolves. And it was probably the first time that I was spending a dedicated amount of time following wolf trails. And so we had snowshoes on. We were with like 15 people, and we would find a fresh trail in the morning and then follow it until sundown, basically.
Wow. And
so we were following this wolf trail. There were 3 wolves, if I remember correctly. And, sometimes wolves will follow in each other's footsteps, and then they split off and go and check out other things and then come back together. And these wolves were going across a frozen lake, and
that'd be harder to track on.
Was a little bit harder to track on. There was a little bit of snow on it still, so we could see it. And there was a spot on the lake. I was leading the group at this point because you have to break snow, and so we would cycle through who was leading what. There was a spot where the lake wasn't frozen in this area, and I started walking to this spot. My snowshoes started gathering with like slushy snow, and I started sinking down, and I was like, oh my, I'm falling into the lake. And I like backtracked, and we decided that we couldn't cross this area, but we wanted to continue following the wolf trail. So we like marked on a map where we were. And as we were leaving that area on the other side of the lake where we wanted to go, there were a whole bunch of ravens like cawing and just making a ruckus. And we were like, weird, what is that? Later that night, we go home, digest all the cool tracks that we saw, and go to bed. And that night, I have a dream about what the ravens were cawing at. And I dreamt that I was following the wolf trail, and I saw this like an old moose rub on a tree, and then a tree that was downed, and like a spruce tree that has shallow roots. And so when it falls down and the roots are sticking up, it looks like a ginormous hand on the landscape. And in my dream, I followed this spruce tree to the end of the roots. And at the end of the roots, there's a caribou, a dead caribou with like pale blue eyes looking at me. And I was like, what is this? And I woke up.
And then you went and checked it out, and it was there, and it was real. Is that
yes,
it?
Yes.
What? That's not real. I was just
No, it's crazy because it is true. That's what it wasn't a caribou that we saw, but we ended up finding a dead moose. And right by there was an ancient moose rub, and there was also a down tree.
Oh, weird.
Angela, of course there are down trees all over the place,
True.
right? I have no idea that this was a premonition or something.
Yes, this happened to you before or afterwards.
No, it was just a one-time thing, but it's so interesting that my mind was so fixated on that.
I wanted to
get to the bottom of it, right? I wanted to know what was happening. And so
again, all of the details you needed to put it together were there from all the tracking you did for that day, and then your brain just did it in its sleep.
Exactly. And on that moose, there was like marten that had been feeding on it. There were lots of mice and raven tracks, and we ended up prying the moose out of the ice and flipping it over so that the animals could eat the other side. Mm-hmm. And upon investigating this moose, we found that it had a lot of food in its belly, and it didn't look like it had been killed, and it did look like it had like an abscessed tooth or a cavity or something. And so we interpret it that the moose died of like a toothache or like some kind of degenerative disease in its mouth.
I just think that's amazing, all the different connections you can make as you dive more and more into that. Do you have any advice for our listeners that want to start getting more involved with tracking or want to learn more about tracking? Maybe go from reading the ABCs to the picture book stage and then beyond.
Yeah, I think just getting out on the land and looking for tracks and trying to find a trail. And so if it's snowing or if there's snow out in your area, it's easier to follow a trail. But you can also find spots by a riverbed where there's sandy stretches of sand that you can follow deer trails or coyote trails, or sometimes like even owl trails. Like I've seen owls walking in the sand and then taking off.
That's so cool.
And so when you find a track, start asking yourself questions like, what am I looking at? What am I actually looking at? Can I see toes? Can I see claws? Which direction do I think it's going in? And then start to interpret the trail. Like, if it's going this direction, why would it be going that direction? You can think about a deer, like, is it going from a bed to a feeding area, or is it going from a feeding area to a resting area? And start to interpret what they're doing and why they might be doing that. And then, yeah, I think I would put a challenge out to you all. If you find a trail, try the 100 track challenge and try and follow a trail for 100 footprints.
Wow.
And see if you can interpret what the animal's doing.
I've never heard of that challenge. I love it.
Yeah. And Brandon, the other thing is that you don't need any equipment. You don't need guides. You don't need anything. You can just go out, find a spot. Maybe it's underneath a bridge where there's some good substrate, meaning soil or mud, and look at those trails, look at those tracks.
I think, too, sometimes just letting your imagination go a little wild. Like, I think it is I like to be like, okay, what is actually happening? But one of my favorite things is when we take kids out to interpret trails and the stories they come up with. And like, oh, there was a deer and then a dragon came and chased it. And that's why that maple tree is black right there, because the dragon fire burned it. And then it ran this way. And it's a little bit more fantastical. But I think sometimes getting your brain to exercise that little bit of fantasy and whatnot, have fun with it, get out there, figure out what are the trails. But whether you go to the extreme of I have to be 100% precise in what's happening, or the extreme of this is going to be a complete fantasy world, I think it's important to know it's okay to not be 100% correct in what your story is. Because I don't know that you can 100% tell what the story is.
You can't. I don't think you ever can. I would say that that's one of the things that I actually really liked about tracking as I was getting into it, is that I could revel in the mystery and I could go home feeling excited about what I saw without having to know that this is exactly that I'm certain of what I saw. And that's also why people say when you track alone, you're always right. And so go with a friend, because Brandon is going to look at things differently than Angela, and I'm going to look at things differently too. And so it's fun to come to a consensus about what are we all seeing here, right? Mm-hmm. And then we're actually discussing and interpreting together, and we're actually using our minds to unravel some of the mysteries.
Yeah. And we do tracking in the park. So we set up scent stations, they're called. They're luring in different animals to these scented tablets. They smell terrible. And it is in a nice, like, sifted sand area, like Adrian was mentioning, which makes really great for identifying. And I can tell you all the times that our seasonals and staff sit around to look at those prints and go, oh, it's this. And it's almost always a squirrel. Or it's almost always someone walking their dog. Like, it's not, but it's always because we put cameras on them too, so that we can confirm through the camera what it is. And it's just always amazing, the variability in it. So I think that's so important to touch. Like, yeah, you don't always have to be right. Just be curious about it and immerse yourself in nature to tell that story and share it with others.
Sadly, we're running out of time, as we always do. But I did want to end on one final question. I'm wondering, what do you think you learned from reading animal stories, and how do you apply that to yourself on a personal level?
Yeah, one of the books that I have on my shelf is by a French philosopher and tracker, just like me, named Baptiste Morisot, and he has a book called Ways of Being Alive. And I think what tracking has done for me is to show me that so many different animals live in completely different ways. The way that they spend their time on the land is so vastly different from what humans do, these days. And so it helps me to recenter my thinking around human-based understanding or viewpoints of the world to a wildlife point of view. And I think that it also helps me be a better storyteller. You know, I'm bringing these stories home. And Brandon, you mentioned that you've got a little one at home, and so do I. And my kid is like actively telling stories about deer and about coyotes and saying like, coyotes are popping up left and right, and like just going. She's telling stories in ways that I tell stories, and it's really heartwarming. And I know that she's thinking about animals a lot because I'm thinking about animals, and it's what I'm expressing to her. And then lastly, I think that wildlife tracking helps me to see my own patterns and behaviors. Like, for instance, I always like seeing flying squirrel tracks, and sometimes I go out thinking that I'm going to see one, and then I look at the tracks and I'm like, these are definitely flying squirrel tracks. And then I measure them and they don't fit any of the measurements, but I still believe that they're flying squirrel tracks. And I have to check myself like, oh, where else in my life do I think I'm seeing flying squirrel tracks, you know?
Yeah.
That's always a good lesson. It's very human nature, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today, for sharing your stories. I truly, truly appreciate it. I love working with you. People should totally go to Mississippi Gateway and say hi to you. It's a great building. You're a great person to do programs with. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Brandon.
Next time we talk to Michael Kurtz, enrolled member from the Lower Brule Sioux Tribe in South Dakota and local naturalist, about why he learned how to read animal tracks and document them with photography.